So this was the topic. So this was not a normally scheduled design meeting, but we wanted to do it to be able to talk about use cases. And what I'm going to suggest we do is I'll create a new Etherpad for use cases so we can capture them unless you've already got a document, which either way I'll create a new Etherpad for it. And then something came up at the last design meeting, which was this concept of CMDB to JIG renaming. And we were hoping if people are amenable to do it this coming sprint, actually on Thursday during the planning sessions, because that hopefully all the code will be checked in, and then we won't impact this sprint, but with the risk of the renaming.
Whoever in the car or outside, could you please mute?
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise. It's still pretty noisy, so if you're not talking, everybody please mute. Okay. All right, so let me create a new Etherpad. So that we can make this generic, I'm going to just do a one called Crowbar Use Cases.
Hi, Adam.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted and lost track of time.
We're just getting running. So the idea was we were going to talk through the use cases with Susa as the lead on that, and then I wanted to inject in that the CMDB renaming discussion very quickly, if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
So I don't know, Ken, do you want to do a quick introduction? Because I guess you're pretty new to everybody, most people on this call.
Yeah, so my name's Kenneth Weimer. I've worked for SUSE previously in Canonical and a couple other companies, and now I'm working for SUSE again as a designer. So I do UI and UX design, and I'm going to be working on our cloud product, which essentially is Crowbar and OpenStack to a large extent. Crowbar seemed to be the place where I felt like that's where I could have the most effect, just because OpenStack has a whole headache and it's a lot, it's already formed, so to speak. I've been going through the whole interface trying to understand. I've been trying to understand what the whole cloud thing is to begin with. So I've been going through the interface and looking at the functionality, and I've ran into a lot of questions essentially. And I think these questions would be answered in use cases most likely. I'm not sure how progressed the design effort is within Crowbar itself. If there's other designers working on it, or if there's like design meeting, and I think, ooh, that sounds good to me. So yeah, right now I'm at the very beginning, and if I ask any stupid questions, don't misunderstand me, though. I may just be misunderstanding something myself.
There's tremendous opportunity for improvement on the UI side. UI design was done very early in the history of the project, and a lot of the use cases and the way we want the product, it really expresses the mechanics of how it works, not necessarily the flows. So we did do some use cases, and I'm going to dig them up while you frame things out a little bit. One thing to note, though, is that during the refactor, what we want to do is make sure we preserve, make sure it's too strong. The thought had been to preserve the current UI and do additive refactoring, so that way, from a test perspective and a community perspective, there's less disruption from using the product and not having to test new screens or learn new screens. That doesn't mean that we don't want to improve it, because I've done a lot of UI work, and I'm not proud. There's considerable opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and I think use cases are a great way to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having worked in agile projects before, and I think this is very agile and the way it sounds, it's more, the use case is probably a bigger description, and we probably work on more of a user story level with more simplified things, kind of very specific small tasks. I think that's clear to see from the current UI. You can gather a lot of those user stories just by looking at what is already implemented. Being able to somehow
Please press any key to remain in conference.
Sorry, I've got the Dell Bridge crosswired in.
I thought that was my phone. Like, what the heck? So, yeah, to be honest, any information that I could get would be good in any way, shape, or form. And it being a running system and the fact that we're, moving from 1.0 to 2.0 or whatever, we're bumping a version, so I'm not gonna suggest any major UI changes as such like that. So I'll keep the structure of pretty much what it is. It doesn't seem to be the right time for that.
And we have opportunities to do split test add-ins and things like that. So I think things like that are very welcome. And we also have in the past conceptually added new screens through Barclamps. So it's
Sorry, so hold on 1 second. Why are we not actually considering major UI revamps? Timeline-wise, or?
yes.
For me right now, it's a timeline factor. It's the fact that
That's fine. Yeah, I can buy that. But in general, no, definitely. Go on. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah, in fact, I've looked into it. I've tried to get a good idea of the concept behind what everyone's doing, and there are major UI things that I would suggest. I could see it all. I keep wanting to look at it in a whole different direction, but because I only have a couple months to get our next release done, this seems like the first good step.
I think you've got exactly the right angle. We definitely want to bring things in, and we want to revisit things, and we just need to get the core functional. Cool. There are screens that are going to have significant code movement, and for those we probably can look at bigger changes. But that's one of the.
I was going to say, when I could. Go ahead.
I was going to say one.
Well, I was looking at it. Okay, you go ahead.
I was going to stress the point that it is very feasible to bring in UI add-ins as Barclamps. So you can extend, and we've done this, where you can you create a whole new UI or new UI concept, bring it in, have it in its own Barclamp, and then it's an option to bring it in, and people can add it, test out the new framework, and then you could swap it at that point.
Yeah, that would be excellent, to be honest. That would be excellent to do any kind of testing, just regular usability testing of it. So, yeah, I mean, that's who I am, that's where I'm at, and I would appreciate any information that anybody has in any way, shape, or form.
So, did you already write out, have some use cases that you had in mind?
I have done nothing with use cases yet because I didn't want to try to define something that I thought, that is my opinion of it. I'm just learning about the cloud itself.
Okay. I'm trying to find the use cases that we have in here, and the testing framework is set up to be use case-ish. Wow, yeah, we have a ton of information in here. Okay, I need to review it just enough to make sure that. Again, I think I can liberate it. Okay. So what we've done in the past, this might be useful, is that we identified, and you'll see these names. You'll see Oscar in here a bit. We created the concept of personas for use case. So we had Oscar, Charlie, Denise and Quick. Quick is our tongue-in-cheek data center operator because everybody says, "Quick, go get a server rack." And so we use that. Other than that, we just did first letter affiliations for ops, CIO, and developer. But we used these and they were helpful. And then we actually...
Yeah, definitely. That's excellent that you have personas. I didn't know that there was anything like that. That's really good.
Most of our personas, frankly, are around Oscar and Quick. Which makes sense.
Did you post a link to that in chat or something?
Sorry, I can. It's linked off of the...
That would be excellent.
Is the screen share not running? It should be, but I'll...
the screen share. I forgot about the screen share. Okay, there we go.
And then the...
Yes, I see.
And then the... those are the...
Okay, great.
Yeah, so if please go ahead and add... these aren't in Markdown, so... all right, let's see. I don't think any... The only trick here is that there are... let's see. Okay. These are very old, but they help explain. I just dumped a ton of them. All right. So from there, we ended up with the idea of getting the equipment set up to base. And I'm not going to read these as is, but it's probably worth somebody taking a pass through and seeing what still makes sense. We actually use these as a script pretty well, right? Even down to the a manifest check. Right. This is actually.
I would say it almost looks.
Yeah.
It's almost like behavior-driven development.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's part of what we've been trying to accomplish with this. So when we built these out, we really tried to get these. This was the focus, and then the UI. These were written before the UI, or during or at the same time, so they influenced a lot of the things that we needed to do with the UI. Actually, is my server running? Hold on, let me get my server running, and then I can show you UI if that helps. So I don't have any notes on this. Work in this. Let me see if I can quickly populate something. That looks good. So there's only a few concepts in the system, all told. Wow, I just love it when development code actually runs when you expect it to. The idea with the Node dashboard was to simulate racks of gear to actually be able to create a model of the rack, and that's what these views were supposed to be. And then we had added this grouping concept. So the use cases driving this screen were to be able to look at the screen and see the physical bring up of the nodes going. So we wanted to be able to physically, everything we have right on this screen was around being able to create a physical model, and that was the goal here. Each you should be able to look at the rack and then see it. And then we got to a point where people wanted to start doing like having a compute cluster. So when they had compute clusters and they say, well, this node, it's in a rack, but I really want it to be, these are the nodes in my compute cluster. And so we created those. Conceptually, there's a view here. There's really two different views that people want from a use case perspective. One is they want to be able to map their gear to the rack. And then there's another view where they want to be able to logically track how their equipment's allocated. and see its status. Now, these aren't use cases the way we have on the other screen, but they're the core of that. We had worked, and I don't have that view working with, there's a network view that actually shows the switch topology, which is another use case. People want to be able to look at the logical network topology, the physical network topology, and see that implemented. And we have a view in the network side that implements that also.
I think it's interesting that you have this whole group idea sounded very compelling to me. I realized, I didn't realize that it was supposed to kind of show the physical boxes, but now that I think that it was automatically named by MAC address, then maybe that's kind of should be clear to me in the meantime. I found, like, this is some of the stuff that I was looking at in the whole node dashboard thing, is that it seems to me there's maybe what's missing in trying to find the node to Barclamp or roles. It's really hard to see an overview of that or to find things that are similar and stuff like that. And that's where this idea of creating groups sounded very interesting to me, to be able to say, like you say, you have a compute group, and then I can say these roles go to that entire group, for instance. But that's, once again, expanding this thing.
And you're getting, Dave Patterson's asking if there's something with your mic that's generating a lot of static when you speak.
Okay, I'm trying to cut it. I mean, maybe if I turn it down, so is that better?
Talk again.
Probably. Is that better now?
A little better. It's still really crackly.
Okay, well, I'll try to mute out whenever I'm not talking then.
Okay. It's only when you're talking.
It's only when I'm talking. That's actually my voice.
Yeah, are you using the office one or using the bridge or something?
I'm using the office phone, actually. I'm using a regular telephone.
Oh, that's strange. No, we could get you a new phone or something. But yeah, we'll try to figure out before the next call. I guess there's not much we can do right now.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you're talking on a wireless set. It's not digital. It's like static garbage. It's not digital garbage.
I think sometimes it sounds like that when the battery in the headset is running low.
I'm not even using a headset. I'm using a regular telephone. Like, it's weird. I can't imagine why, but I'll just keep muting out. To be honest, I don't have much more to say. I really like to just, learn first what, the current situation is and what's there for information, so that I don't have to dig for information.
That's cool. And I'm touring it, and then I'm recording too, so you can go back and play back some of these pieces. We haven't walked through the UI in a long time, so it's really useful. Right now, I have a ton of missing information. If you click on a node, you'll get this pane per node, and we really struggled with this because there's so much information available for a node that we always kept dumping things into this node screen, and it ultimately becomes so big that if you have a lot of nodes, it takes up too much real estate. But we used this panel to provide actions. So these actions are these are IPMI tied actions, so that they do actions, node actions on the rack. So you can turn on the identify light, which is really helpful. Whether or not we could put these in this view, we chose to keep these visually very clean with some hover. So there's hover over here. You're supposed to be able to get. I must have broken that with the links. You should be able to get the description of the node, and if you hover here, you should get the state of the node. Looks like our hovers are busted. And then these actions are could conceivably be moved or hidden, but these actions are related to proposal sort of overarching actions. So this would delete the node. And then these concepts are tricky for people. We've had confusion. Deleting the node completely removes it, and then it would power it down. And if you started the node back up, then it would basically be completely rediscovered. Reset will put the node and lose all its formatting, and it basically does a reboot and then does a completely clean node bring up. Reinstall reformats the disks but leaves all the configurations, so it reapplies all the configurations. We struggled with these names, but those are the use cases. So I can step back and give you use cases. The use case for identify is I can't figure out which node I'm working with, so I need to turn on the light on the node. So delete is I have a node that I want to remove from the system. Reset is I have a node that I want to repurpose and use in a different way. Reinstall is I have a node that I want to be the same thing, but I want to set it up. I want to reapply everything from scratch. So it's like a redo, a do-over button. And then hardware update is I have a RAID or BIOS change I need to make. So I need to tell it to make those changes. So we separated RAID and BIOS updates from the normal reboot actions. And then the things on this screen, most of this is informational, and we've been adding things as we find it's really important to add them. On this, the things that say pending here are actually exactly what you were describing, from a cross-linking Barclamps to nodes view. So what these views would do is they would actually list out all of the Barclamps in Chef, all the roles that node belongs to. And if you highlight over one of those nodes on this view, it highlights the nodes that are also in that view, which is useful, but not, it's a little cumbersome. There is definitely a use case for I have this role of the system and I want to see which nodes are in it. And then I actually had a working mind map view. It's actually, the code's out there in a Barclamp called Spray Gun. And the idea with that would be that you would get, here's all the roles in the system. If I click on one, then it drills down to show me the nodes. If I click on a node, it then shows me the roles, and I can navigate the whole system looking at that. And actually, I've played with the idea of using some of the visual mappings to show role-node relations. I think in Crowbar 2, that's going to be more valuable or actually more available than Crowbar 1. One of the issues with Crowbar 1 is that we just couldn't search Chef conveniently in certain ways, the way we can now that we have a database. So showing you all the roles, it wasn't that easy to do, and it didn't produce that much usable information. That's probably changed at this point. Okay, and then do I have anything? Yeah. So in network, there's a switches view, and the idea with the switches view, so these are ports of the switches, and because we have the information, it would actually show you which nodes were connected to which. So the NC would tell you what node name was attached. And the thing that we would do is if you highlighted a switch here, it would also highlight all of the other ports that were connected to that switch, which this is a really good use case. We get a lot of interest in this. So if you're looking at a node and you want to know how it's connected to the network, this shows you that. And then there's another view here which shows you which nodes are on which VLANs. This view needs some work, but it's very important for troubleshooting and management to understand which nodes are connected to which. These end up being conduits, so that you can see which nodes can crosstalk. Crowbar, since it's dynamic, changes this map all the time. So if you were looking at the system, it is very important for you to be able to get a list of nodes and then see this node is connected to these conduits, so you know which nodes can talk to what. Okay, Barclamps. This is really the heart of the system, and I don't have the OpenStack Barclamps installed. So we have a general concept of Barclamps having subgroups so that you can have Crowbar Barclamps, OpenStack Barclamps, and it just shows you the subset. And within a Barclamp, and we ended up, this was the second version of this screen. All the Crowbar, not all, most of the Crowbar Barclamps here are implicit, meaning they're automatically set up. Some of them are just flat out required, like Crowbar and the provisioner and the network. You need to have a Barclamp. And then so what happens is, I'll try and use the new names. We're trying to migrate to names, so we should at least migrate in the UIs to make it clear. Inside of a Barclamp, the Barclamp is effectively a template. It's properties. You can create multiple configurations, multiple instances of that Barclamp. In the past, we've called them proposals. But what happens is, under each Barclamp, it's conceivable that you would have one or more configurations, different options with different node capabilities. This isn't going to work at all if I click down any further. So I might want to call one prototype. So I might have a prototype configuration, and then I might have another one that would be for test, my test lab configuration. And then those two proposals would have what we call proposals. Those two configurations would actually have different sets of nodes in them. And they might have slightly different configurations, like different passwords or things like that. So the use case is that inside of a data center environment, I'm going to want to take my Barclamps and apply them to different groups, different sets of equipment, with different configurations. So I want the same deployment logic applied with different configuration parameters to different sets of equipment. And that's what this whole menuing system is designed for. Is to be able to say a Barclamp is a set of deploy logic, and a configuration is basically a chain, is a deployment of that Barclamp. And so lexically we had called them proposals. It was really confusing people because once proposals are applied, we still call them proposals even though they're in use. So we've been trying to change the name to call them configurations, and it would sound like this. My logging Barclamp has a prototype configuration, has a dev configuration, has a test configuration, has a production configuration. And the instance of the dev configuration has nodes 1, 2, and 3 in it, and with the logging target of the dev server, the build server. My production configuration of the logging Barclamp, the instance of my logging configuration, production logging configuration, points to my rlog server in the utility rack. And so the idea is that each one of these environments would be able to coexist, but would have different configurations. And then the configuration effectively has a timeline of instances. So as you change the configuration, you move it from one instance of that configuration to the next. And then Crowbar's whole internal mechanism, when you move from one instance of a configuration to the next, that spawns the orchestration engine to go do a whole bunch of work. So every time a configuration, which is one of these lines here, changes, it goes into a state system, and that configuration is actually changing states. So the configuration is going to go through a series of apply these changes, and it's going to take nodes and it's going to put nodes into a new state while they're going through the work. And that really is the mechanism that we run the orchestration engine. So changing configuration from one instance to another changes these systems that runs all the orchestration logic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does actually, very much.
And so if inside of one of these, you're going to pop up a screen, and that screen, which I can't show you easily, has maybe I can. I don't remember the line. No, it's not going to do anything. Inside that screen, there's two aspects to that screen. One, the top part is properties. You're basically setting up properties for that Barclamp, or attributes, as I guess we'd call them now. And then the bottom side is you're putting nodes into roles. So you have to make two choices when you work on a configuration. You have to make a choice of what the attributes are for the configuration, so how it varies from the defaults. And you have to decide which resources to apply for that configuration. And resources for us right now are all nodes. And it's not as simple as I want these 4 nodes to be in the configuration. Configurations have a subconcept of roles. And so when you choose a node for a configuration, you have to choose to put that node into a role. So the use case would be the operator saying, okay, when I'm building a Nova cluster, I need some servers to be in the controller role and identified as the controller, and I need some nodes to be in the compute and actually just run the virtualization engine. So the operator has to make choices about which resources go into which roles. Realistically speaking, there's a third thing in addition to attributes and resources, and that's other Barclamps. So prerequisites or cross dependencies. We treated that in the past as just other attributes, but it would be actually better from a use case perspective for us to actually say, well, the Nova Barclamp depends on the MySQL Barclamp and the Keystone Barclamp and the Cinder Barclamp, and therefore we actually model those as we actually could show them as dependencies rather than just as attributes, because they're not the same, right? If I could actually drill, if I was an operator building the Nova Barclamp, it's very reasonable for me to say, well, I want to edit the SQL Barclamp, the SQL instance that I'm depending on before I take any further actions, and we would want to be able to navigate upwards into my prerequisites. Those concepts don't exist, right? The concepts of interdependency exist, but navigating in the UI don't accommodate that, because that came in after we built the current models. Okay. Do you have questions about the Barclamp screens as they exist so far?
No, but once again, you've answered some questions that I had, so this is really good, because I keep coming on things that I went, okay, I don't quite get why that's that way. A lot of it seemed unfinished, and I think some of it is unfinished, so that explains a lot.
It's definitely unfinished work. And there's also things that, one of the things that is easy to forget is that this isn't one application. It's a framework with a whole bunch of modules that plug into it. So we made choices not to spend a lot of time building UI in the modules, and so most of them use default UI rendering, whereas it's possible to have dedicated UI rendering. So for the network Barclamp, actually it provides these screens rather than Crowbar. And the same thing is true with utilities. And the square brackets here, by the way, indicate that these are things that are in dev mode. So you would not see, if you just installed Crowbar 2 today, it would hide all these menus that have brackets. So the idea is we bring in new capabilities or new screens under the dev flag so that they can be tested and played with, and then we turn them on in production once they're baked. So while we're working on these, most things are hidden. Utilities, the utility screen is all these top menus are meant to be extended. So the idea is that a Barclamp could bring in utilities of its own that it wanted in the system. One of the Dell Barclamps brings in an inventory system, an inventory screen, and that can show up under the utilities list. I think it doesn't, but it probably should. The biggest, this is really broken. One of the things that we added was the ability to import Barclamps. So the use case here is that an operator deploys Crowbar with OpenStack Essex, for example. OpenStack Folsom comes out and they want to upgrade to Folsom. So this import process allows you to take Crowbar and then bring in new capabilities, new functionality. That one actually is a double case because it's not only Essex to Folsom, so there's an upgrade. It includes the upgrade. It might be simpler to say I have OpenStack installed and I want to bring in Ceph as a storage mechanism. So I can bring in the Ceph Barclamp, and then this is the mechanism I do it. So this would show me, and if the view is working, it would show me a list of all the installed Barclamps and their version and the date they were done, and then any notes that came in with the Barclamp. And then I can click choose file, I can upload a new Barclamp, and then I can run it. And the system has a prerequisite check. So Barclamps know that they have dependencies, and it will not let you import Barclamps if you're not also importing or haven't already installed the prerequisites.
Rob, this is Wayne. Is this Barclamp list what is mentioned in the Trello card for the sprint?
No, the Barclamp list in the Trello card is this one.
Okay.
You can see the effects of my test. I created a Barclamp called Rob. Okay, and then exported items. It's working. I'm watching in my dev window behind the scenes. It's showing me that it exported some files. So the idea here is that we had users who had trouble, and we needed their logs. So we created a screen where we could export logs and then make them available for download, which is what this does. But we extended this screen so any Barclamp can add a button into this list, and then be able to export things that we want to show up in the list. So if a Barclamp has, like the Chef Barclamp wants to export the Chef database, perfectly reasonable thing to do. We could add a button in here. You would click that button, and then it would show up as a Chef file for export. And then somebody doing a support call. There's probably a user that we're not accommodating here. So Sally, the support center. So this is a person who takes calls about the installation. So that's actually a persona that we work to service, because this screen, the primary user for this screen is actually the remote service support person who's saying, hey, I need you to get the logs and produce information for me. The user screen is new, and it's to provide basic user security. There's probably a whole bunch of use cases in here about unlocking passwords and doing things like that. I'm not going to spend much time because that's pretty typical. And then help is help. And we've spent time before talking about help and trying to build that further. This is the dev version, by the way. There's a whole bunch of extra data that show up only in dev mode. And then one of the things you can do here is you can actually take a book, and then you can do export, and then it collects all of the children into the book, into a single book. So all these things could use navigation. I forgot some use cases under nodes. So one of the first things we hit in nodes was the need to make rename activity and do it very quickly. So we enabled that here. And there's a core concept for allocate. So the way the system works is when a node is discovered, it's held in a discovered state. And so there's a use case that says, I have my nodes in a discovered state, and I want to move them. I just want to install an OS so that they're available. That's what these allocate checkboxes do. The normal workflows are that the nodes stay in an allocated state until you decide what Barclamps they belong to. So the normal workflow is you boot all the nodes, they get discovered, and then you go to the Barclamps, and then you start allocating nodes in the Barclamps position. There is a huge missing use case that confuses people, where I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain it. If I was building OpenStack, this is one of those incomplete things. We really don't want somebody to build OpenStack by going Barclamp to Barclamp to Barclamp.
Yeah, I think you're breaking up a bit. I can't hear everything. It keeps going in and out.
Yeah, Rob, you're breaking up a lot.
Thank you for interrupting me on that. Let's see. Let me switch back to the other mic. Can you hear me better now? Is this any better?
I can hear you better now. At least you haven't broken.
Okay. Cool. I switched back to the first mic, so yes. So here's the missing use case. If you're configuring OpenStack or Hadoop, what you really want to do is you want a single view of all the Barclamps, right? Most operators don't care that we broke the system into 10 Barclamps. So actually, they'd rather we didn't. So it would be preferential to be able to say, I have a infrastructure node, right? I have an infrastructure role that actually includes the database and the this and the that, and the database and Keystone and all these other pieces. If I put a node in infrastructure, then Crowbar should really be able to figure out that these 4 Barclamps are going to assign roles out of the infrastructure node, and then if I have these are compute, you just do the right thing with compute nodes. So there's a higher level class that we haven't accommodated right now. We've talked about it, but it hasn't seemed like it was preventing people from using Crowbar. It would definitely help people use Crowbar, but the idea is that you could manage at the OpenStack level, put things in roles, and then the OpenStack Barclamp would then drill down to the Barclamps that it used under the covers and put things in appropriate roles from there, and then do the deployments. And so sort of back to where your original question was, which is that, is there a place where I can see what nodes are going on and what roles and watch all that stuff happen? There isn't yet. But there's clearly a need for it, right? From a UI perspective, the number one criticism that we get about Crowbar is there's too much magic. And the way I've been translating that is the operators who are watching the system come up can't see the gears turning enough. So they don't, they apply a proposal and they see little spinning lights, but they don't really know Crowbar's going through this step and then that step and then the next step. We didn't really build the UI to give that type of visibility. And in Crowbar 2, we're actually starting to get the the mechanisms to provide the visibility, but how you would actually expose that in the UI so that it was usable is something we haven't given any thought to at all. But it's definitely a challenge for any deployment system, Crowbar included, that when you're doing things that take a long time, people don't get any feedback. They don't really know that that's happening. And so it's really important to give more feedback to say, okay, we're rebooting the node. It's going to take a couple minutes, but the node is rebooting. You should be able to see that. So we're working on getting finer grained information, and then we need to have ways to show that to users.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I found that kind of confused me at first was the UI seems to have a lot of blinking in it, so much so that I don't understand what it's really trying to tell me. It seems to be, I don't know, it's confusing to me to some extent.
That's reasonable. The challenge is when a system's coming up, you're going to have all the nodes in transition states, and so we actually provide, if you notice in the refresh, the state here unknown is actually changing. It's being refreshed, and you could actually get pretty fine-grained data. We made the choice not to make the lights have too many different icons. Matter of fact, they have relatively few, and so and I'm not sure how you would want to deal with it. It's not clear how you would want to do the transitions and make it clearer. At one point, I had played with a view where it actually showed nodes in different states, and then as nodes jumped to different states, they'd move. It was sort of like a swim lanes chart, and so you could actually watch nodes progress in swim lanes. And that gets caught. There's a use case that is captured pretty well in the use cases, but I haven't talked about it all, which is there's a deployment mode where you're bringing all these nodes up for Crowbar, and then you want the UI to be very descriptive and provide a lot of information and things like that in that mode. And then there's a operations mode where you need much less information about what's going on in the system because it's really a steady state. And so that's been a challenge. The other thing that's been a challenge for us is the screens that are designed were designed to go up to about 60 nodes. Once you cross really 40, you get a lot of information, and it's much more challenging to monitor. And sort of build a comprehensive UI. We're going to address the performance issues for high density screens in Crowbar 2, but the UI concepts around having 100 nodes here, even if they're grouped into 10 racks, it still becomes visually very difficult to manage.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my very first questions was what's a typical average number of nodes that are going to be shown? How many roles are possible? How many Barclamps are there? I don't know. In the meantime, I think I've kind of figured that out. But just to understand how many users will be administering this thing, are the users, all these kind of basic questions, are the users who set them up the same users who maintain them or who do operations and all kinds of stuff?
I would...
Which probably is...
Go ahead.
Probably cleared up some in the use case.
So, yeah, I mean, what I would ask is review the use cases that I dropped into here and then post, let's collect questions. There we go. And then if you want, just post, take questions through the list, because those are questions we can really easily interact through the list on. And we'll track back the answers here, because I think it's really useful to build up a document that tracks that.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing I was going to say. Is anything that I'd like to do, I want to document exactly why I did it in any way, and all the design suggestions and all I'll probably make various, 3 different propositions, and it's part of my job is also to kind of make this a SUSE product. So in addition to what I'm doing for the SUSE design-wise, I'll also try to keep another version that's the blank, non-theme version, or the upstream theme version.
Right. And we've done the same thing. So the Dell, and I can get you access to the Dell, what the Dell skin looks like. Although I think you guys pretty much replicated similar functionality using the same mechanisms. But when we use the Dell, I don't think I can import the Barclamp. That would be really cool. Let me see. I don't think there's any chance that this would work. So there's actually a Dell Barclamp. Nope. Darn it. That turns the whole screen white and brings in, there's that inventory page, and there's some minor stuff like that. So that is definitely a mechanism that we expect to maintain, is having the sort of this open source style, and then a branded overlays. So.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So this is, we've gone, since we started late, we've gone about 50 minutes on this. I think this is hopefully I wasn't expecting to do an introduction, but I hope this was helpful.
Actually, this was very helpful for me. I wonder how it works for everybody else. But even just every now and then doing a UI review is kind of nice, even for developers who aren't interested in UI. Totally
agree. And we've been very careful to maintain I18N on this, so everything you see is localized. I have a very strong preference to localizing strings, mostly because I think it helps with maintainability, and reduces risk if there's errors. So that should make things easier for you, but it's something to consider in UI design.
Yeah, being an American working for a German company, I'm pretty much used to having to make everything translatable.
Excellent. Well, we definitely we suffer from not actually testing different languages in here. I don't lose sleep over that, but it's one of those classic reused localization, but we don't test localization. All right, I did want to take a minute and talk through the jig rename, because I'd like to get that change in tomorrow. Do people want to have more? Do we need more discussion on it? I know we've gone back and forth on the list a little bit. Everybody okay with it?
In the interim, I've written a little bit of a history, and just below this for the rationale of the rename, and the basic requirements that were coming out of our initial Crowbar 2.0 requirements, and how those requirements, I was starting to write how those requirements come together to create something that was formerly known as the CMDB abstraction layer. I think writing or talking through these requirements will surface, as I say in the last sentence, some assumptions about who owns what data and how data throughout the system, node data, Barclamp data, configuration data, are all classified and serve different purposes and are stored in different places and managed by different systems. That I think we just need a statement about, and probably a picture. And Adam on the list early this morning, I didn't sleep last night, mentioned a desire to see some pictures, class diagram, and a talk through of that. I'm not ready for that right now, but I can be tomorrow morning or next week. I'll be at DevOps Days, New York City, for Thursday, Friday.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Just so you know, next week we have a workshop in Nuremberg with a whole bunch of us, pretty much the whole cloud team, including anyone working on Crowbar from our side, are going to be in the same place. So I don't know whether that means it would be beneficial to do that next week or avoid next week for that. Yeah, I think it would be useful anytime. It's not like super urgent, but I mean, personally, I feel my understanding of the stuff you're talking about is kind of weak. I mean, I kind of get it, but without seeing a bit more detail of under the covers of the relationships between the different classes and so on, I'm not sure how much use I can be to the conversation.
And I think that's something that we do need more meetings on. So, Adam, do you want to keep our Wednesday meeting for next week? Do you think should we expand meetings for next week, or how would you like to handle it?
I think we might need to play it slightly by ear, because I think the schedule for the workshop next week is kind of it's usually a fairly last minute thing. I've only attended one before, so I could be wrong. Maybe James can chip in here, but I suspect we might have to play it slightly by ear.
Why don't you early next week try to sort something out while you're there, and then send something to the list, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so actually we're going to have an internal meeting for our club team here on Thursday. So I think after that meeting we can tell you guys what we would like.
Yeah, we plan to set up the agenda on Tuesday morning, our time. So, but we can pull that to Thursday this week and plan for it.
Work.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we can maybe put something at the end of the planning meeting this week, and then would that be possible? And we just quickly talk about subjects and topics that would be good to address all in a group setting, and then set something up for next week. Is that okay?
That should work.
Okay, cool.
Our next meeting's tomorrow morning at 8 Central Time to do Trello card review and plan, and then we'll keep it up. We'll be flexible.
What's tomorrow? On Thursday.
Sorry, Thursday. I keep thinking today's Wednesday. Okay. Thank goodness it's not.
I think that is useful.
No. Every day matters.
You're always ahead of time.
Every day matters. I need the extra 24 hours.
Well, you just
I feel more relaxed. All right.
All right. So we'll talk on Thursday, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. See you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
All right.
Bye.